The movie opens deep inside a dark mountain tunnel. An elderly grandmother kneels quietly, offering prayers to her son Jung-hyun, who died years ago in a mining accident. She speaks softly, telling him how much she misses him. She reassures him that his daughter Yang-soon is growing up well, and promises that she will continue to take good care of her. As she finishes praying, heavy rain pours down outside. Nearby, part of the rock's formation suddenly collapses. Startled by the noise, the grandmother goes out to see what happened. When she reaches the site, she spots something shining. Gold appears to be scattered inside the mountain surface, and the sight leaves her shaken. Soon after, at the police station, Detective Myung-gun receives a call from the elderly woman reporting what she found. He goes to meet her and calmly dismisses her claim, telling her it cannot be real gold and that she must be mistaken. He urges her to return home before it gets dark. However, moments later, Myung-gun makes a secret phone call. He contacts his twin brother, Dong-gun, and tells him that there really may be gold in the mountain. He asks him to gather his men to check it out. Elsewhere in town, a woman named Young-suk heads to her father's place after she is unable to contact him. When she notices his muddy clothes, her frustration boils over. She scolds him for constantly going up the mountain, asking why he keeps doing it when nothing can bring the dead back. Ki-sung is the sole survivor of the same mining accident that killed Jung-hyun. Since then, he has lived alone, leading a quiet life and spending most of his days hunting in the mountains. On the way out, Young-suk hands him a photograph taken at a school ceremony, showing Ki-sung standing beside Yang-soon. She points out that although he is not the girl's grandfather, he treats her as if she were his own family. Yang-soon is Jung-hyan's daughter, and before he died, Ki-sung promised to protect his daughter. Before leaving for work, Young-suk apologizes for raising her voice, and gently reminds her father to be careful when he goes into the mountains. Later that day, Yang-soon is harassed by a group of local boys who mock her. Though she has an intellectual disability, she is far from helpless. When the boys push too far, she fights back skillfully and knocks them down. Ki-sung arrives soon after and gives her a bottle of tonic and asks her to bring it to her grandmother, then heads toward the police station himself to borrow a gun for hunting. As he approaches, he runs into Detective Myung-gun, who casually warns him about a landslide that occurred in the mountain earlier that day and advises him to stay away from the area. Instead of reassuring Ki-sung, the warning makes him uneasy. In truth, there was no landslide at all. The warning was only an excuse. The group Myung-gun secretly called is already on its way into the mountains. The men are led by Dong-gun, Myung-gun's twin brother, and the head of a dangerous shadowy crew. They arrive heavily prepared, carrying guns, digging tools, and even a metal detector designed to locate buried treasure. Their goal is simple: find out how much gold is hidden beneath the mountain. When Ki-sung reaches the area later that day, he immediately senses something is wrong. A sign at the entrance announces that the mountain is closed, yet several unfamiliar cars are parked nearby. Curious and uneasy, he decides to investigate further. Before he can go much farther, the sharp sound of gunfire echoes through the forest. Meanwhile, Dong-gun's group begins scanning the ground with the detector. The machine reacts, and it soon becomes clear that the entire mountain is filled with gold. The men erupt in excitement, but their celebration is interrupted when the elderly lady suddenly appears. Mistaking Dong-gun for Myung-gun, she angrily asks if he lied to her the day before. With no easy way out, Dong-gun admits the truth. He tells her it is real gold, but coldly insists that the land does not belong to her. The woman refuses to back down. She declares that the land belongs to her deceased son and that she will never allow them to take anything from it. She turns away, unwilling to listen to their arguments. As she leaves, one of the men, Jun-ho, activates a device that releases a piercing noise. In the chaos that follows, another man accidentally shoves the elderly woman. She loses her footing and tumbles down the slope. Hidden nearby, Ki-sung witnesses everything, frozen in shock. A brief flashback reveals the painful truth behind the land. Years earlier, Jung-hyun storms into a real estate office, destroying the place in anger after learning his wife had been tricked into buying worthless land. The loss wipes out their life savings. Overwhelmed with guilt, his wife later unalive herself on that very land. The mountain truly belonged to their family, paid for in tragedy. Back in the present, the group gathers around the fallen grandmother. Some are relieved to see that she is still breathing. Dong-gun, however, sees her as a threat. He tells the others that if she lives, everything will fall apart. He insists they make it look like an accident, promising that once they secure the gold, all their problems will disappear. Without hesitation, he begins to strangle her. Ki-sung watches from a distance, his fear turning into quiet terror. Suddenly, Yang-soon's voice cuts through the forest as she calls out for her grandmother. The sound reaches the hunters. Panicking, Ki-sung realizes they will kill her too if they find her. He rushes toward Yang-soon, trying to protect her, but the gang quickly surrounds them. Dong-gun begins to question Ki-sung, testing him to see how much he knows. Before Ki-sung can respond, the elderly woman's faint voice is heard again. The sound sends the gang into a frenzy. Fearing exposure, they abandon any restraint and start attacking Ki-sung and Yang-soon. When Yang-soon notices her grandmother's necklace lying on the ground, she moves toward it without thinking. In the confusion, her hand brushes against a gun, and it suddenly fires. One of the men is hit and collapses. The forest falls into chaos. Before anyone can react, Ki-sung grabs Yang-soon's hand and pulls her away, running deep into the mountain as the gang shouts behind them and gives chase. As they run, Ki-sung quickly writes a note and gives it to Yang-soon. He tells her to head straight to the police station and give it to the chief. Reluctantly, she turns and runs downhill, while Ki-sung heads in the opposite direction to draw the hunters away from her. The chase through the mountains intensifies. The men close in on Ki-sung, but he moves with confidence, as he knows the terrain better than anyone. Frustration builds among the gang. Junho, obsessed with the gold, argues that they should stop wasting time on Ki-sung and return to the mountain to secure their fortune. Dong-gun refuses. He insists that Ki-sung knows too much, and that both he and Yang-soon must be eliminated to prevent future trouble. Ki-sung, hidden nearby, overhears everything. The group splits into two teams, one sent after Yang-soon and the other after Ki-sung. Not long after, Dong-gun spots Ki-sung hiding among the trees and knocks him unconscious. Later, Dong-gun contacts Myung-gun and assures him that Ki-sung and the elderly woman will be taken care of. All that remains is to find Yang-soon. The gang returns to the elderly woman. They place a bag over her and drag Ki-sung beside her. Dong-gun orders Junho to kill them both and end the matter. Junho hesitates, shaken by what he is being asked to do. Sensing an opening, Ki-sung pretends to whisper something to him. In that brief moment, he grabs a rock and strikes Junho, knocking him out, before fleeing deeper into the forest. Before leaving the area, Dong-gun instructs the others to make it look like Ki-sung murdered the elderly woman and then buried her. Hiding nearby, Ki-sung hears the plan and also learns that they have already found Yang-soon. Without hesitation, he runs toward her location. Meanwhile, Yang-soon is being chased through the woods by two remaining thugs. She runs desperately, until a gunshot rings out and she falls to the ground. The bullet grazes her arm, leaving her injured but alive. As the men raise their guns to finish her, a shot echoes from behind them. Ki-sung fires, killing one of the attackers, while the other flees into the forest. Yang-soon looks up at Ki-sung and immediately asks about her grandmother. Unable to lie, Ki-sung's silence tells her the truth. She breaks down in tears, and he holds her, trying to comfort her as best he can. He carefully treats her wound, then borrows her belt and tells her to wait for him while he retrieves her grandmother's necklace. At the police station, an officer reports hearing gunshots coming from the mountain. When the chief learns that Ki-sung is in the area with a group of armed hunters, he immediately orders his men to head there without delay. At the same time, deep in the mountains, the gang finishes killing the elderly grandmother and forces Junho to bury her body. Elsewhere in the forest, the remaining men regroup after realizing another member has been killed and that Ki-sung has escaped once again. Tension rises as Junho sarcastically asks Dong-gun what their next move should be, now that everything has gone wrong. As they continue walking, they suddenly notice Yang-soon's belt tied tightly around a tree. It is clearly placed there on purpose, a trap meant to draw them in. Ki-sung steps out from the shadows behind them and orders the men to drop their weapons. He demands the grandmother's necklace be returned. Dong-gun tries to calm the situation and suggests they negotiate. Just as Ki-sung is about to pull the trigger, Dong-gun suddenly pulls a gun from his pocket and opens fire. A violent shootout erupts in the forest. Ki-sung fires back relentlessly, but he is hit and begins to bleed. Surrounded and outnumbered, he narrowly escapes into the forest. A flashback reveals the truth behind the old mining accident. Years ago, Jung-hyun and Ki-sung were trapped on a cliff deep inside the mine. Realizing this, he chose to sacrifice himself so that Ki-sung could live. The trauma of that moment never left Ki-sung, leaving him with deep psychological scars. Only the police chief ever learned the truth, and he chose to keep what happened a secret. Back in the present, Ki-sung finds Yang-soon again and hands her another note, asking her to give it to the chief if he does not survive. They continue moving through the mountain together, trying to escape, while the remaining hunters track them relentlessly through the night. Soon another gunfight breaks out. Yang-soon's scream gives away their hiding place, and in a desperate attempt to protect Ki-sung, she runs out into the open to distract the men. She is shot before she can get away. As one of the hunters approaches to finish her, Ki-sung attacks from behind before going after Junho. But before Ki-sung can finish him, Dong-gun steps forward and shoots Junho himself, before coldly telling Ki-sung to surrender. At that moment, Yang-soon suddenly rises, and uses her martial arts skills to knock Dong-gun to the ground. She hands Ki-sung his gun before collapsing from her injuries. Ki-sung shoots the remaining attacker and carries Yang-soon down the mountain and into the cave, laying her gently on the ground. Overcome with guilt, he begs her to wake up and apologizes to Jung-hyun for failing to protect his daughter. Moments later, Yang-soon opens her eyes. She wipes away Ki-sung's tears, and the two embrace, holding on to each other as the danger outside continues to close in. Meanwhile, the police chief arrives at the mountain with his entire team. As they search the area, they discover several dead bodies scattered across the forest. The investigation soon leads them to the exposed gold hidden beneath the mountain. Not far from the site, they also find the body of the elderly grandmother. Elsewhere in the forest, Ki-sung continues tracking the last remaining men, following a faint sound through the trees. What he does not realize is that it is a trap. Dong-gun and one of his accomplices are waiting. Dong-gun steps out and aims his gun, ordering Ki-sung to surrender. Refusing to give up, Ki-sung fights back with everything he has, but he is eventually overwhelmed. Beaten badly and barely able to stand, he is shoved off a cliff by Dong-gun, disappearing into the darkness below. Hours later, Dong-gun and his remaining man try to escape as police close in from all directions. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out from afar, and the accomplice is killed by an unseen sniper. With no way out, Dong-gun leaps into the river below to escape. What he does not know is that Ki-sung survived the fall. Injured but alive, Ki-sung confronts Dong-gun and kills him, bringing the hunt to an end. As Ki-sung makes his way back toward the cave where Yang-soon is hiding, he is suddenly ambushed by Detective Myung-gun. Consumed by desperation, Myung-gun raises his gun, intending to kill Ki-sung. At that moment, Yang-soon appears. To protect her, Ki-sung stabs the detective in the leg to hold him back, and Myung-gun fires at Ki-sung. Just as everything seems lost, the police chief arrives in time. He shoots Myung-gun and saves Yang-soon. In the aftermath, Yang-soon kneels beside Ki-sung as he lies dying. She tells him they can finally go home now and that everything is over. With his final breath, Ki-sung thanks her for surviving and tells her to keep living. As Ki-sung's body is carried down the mountain, the police chief finds the necklace clutched in his hand and gently returns it to Yang-soon. Then Yang-soon hands him the note Ki-sung asked her to deliver. The message reveals the truth. Yang-soon is his granddaughter. A flashback shows what happened years ago. At Jung-hyun's wife's funeral, he gave Ki-sung a ring that once belonged to his wife. He explains that the ring was originally a gift from Ki-sung's son. At the time, Ki-sung opposed his son's marriage, not knowing she was already pregnant with Yang-soon. In the present, after reading the note, the chief tells Yang-soon that her grandfather loved her deeply, and tells her that the journey ahead will not be easy, but he promises to stay by her side.